I've been telling you guys for years this day was coming. We have discussed this impending doom with ESPN countless times here on the channel. We often take joy in the fact that ESPN is struggling. I don't think anyone in this audience has any sympathy for the wanker spankers at ESPN. I mean, they chose their path. They chose to worship the woke oak tree. They chose to be leaders at Woke United Methodist. And now they are paying the consequences. In the past, when we have talked about the inevitable extinction of ESPN, I've always focused on the consequences facing ESPN. I don't think I have ever mentioned how it's going to impact you and me. Now, even though I would be thrilled if ESPN ceased to exist, I am well aware of how it would impact me financially. First, though, let's start with what happened on Thursday night. Now, even though there were a handful of meaningless games last weekend, Thursday night was the official start to football season. Now, if you're anything like me, you start counting down the days to football season right after the NBA Finals. I cannot stand the months of June, July, and August. Not only is the weather absolutely unbearable here in the Deep South, we also have nothing to look forward to on TV. It's a lose-lose. Too hot to do anything outside with nothing to entertain you inside. Thursday night, millions of people turned their TV to ESPN to watch the marquee game of the evening between Florida and Utah. ESPN was doing what they do best, overhyping a game that ended up being disappointing and boring. Florida's absolutely atrocious. We all knew that going into the season. The pregame show ends. Ball has been placed on the tee. Excitement in the air. We're about to watch the kickoff to what I think is the best time of the year. All of a sudden, for millions of people on the West Coast, their screens go dark. What the hell's going on here? People are checking their HDMI connections, they're checking their accounts to make sure the bill was paid, calling their cable providers demanding to know what the hell happened. At that time, they hear that dreaded automated voice. ESPN is once again demanding exorbitant rates for us to continue to carry their garbage programming that fewer people are watching. Here at Spectrum, we refuse to be extorted by a mouse that can't figure out its gender. We are no longer carrying ESPN. Now, some of you might be thinking, Casey, what's the big deal here? Carriage disputes happen all the time. This is going to be quickly resolved. That's true. They do happen all the time, and you might be right. It might be quickly resolved. But, in the past, networks like ESPN held the leverage with cable and satellite providers. ESPN offered programming that was heavily demanded. Many customers, we just didn't care how much it cost. We just wanted our sports. But this time around, I think cable providers like Spectrum, I think they are holding most, if not all, of the leverage. And when you're negotiating, the party with the leverage has all the power. The timing of this blackout was absolutely calculated by ESPN. They could have cut the feed at midnight Thursday morning, which is what usually happens. But instead, they allowed customers to have access throughout the day, cut the feed right as the game was kicking off. To their credit, it was a smart move. They are trying to have customers pressure Spectrum to give in to their demands. But what happens if that pressure doesn't come? What happens if the majority of Spectrum subscribers don't give a shit about ESPN? I don't think Spectrum is backing down here. According to the New York Times, executives at Spectrum, they are using this dispute with ESPN to show how the antiquated model of cable television is broken. Think about this from their perspective. They are losing customers every month from cord cutting. They are struggling when they have access to ESPN. So why not save millions of dollars every month by not having ESPN, and you just see how your customers are going to react? The cable model, though, the cable model is not the only thing that's broken. The streaming model is not all that efficient either. Streaming services, they are starting to increase their rates. Some are starting to run commercials even though we are paying monthly for access. Why do you think that is? I'm not an expert, but I just don't understand how it's feasible to offer millions of hours of content. I don't see how it's feasible to have hundreds of millions of dollars worth of content and you're selling it for $10 a month. This model gets even trickier with sports. Sports rights are expensive. We're talking billions of dollars for the rights to broadcast the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. And this is where I think in the very near future, it's going to have a massive impact on me and you. Do you guys remember the regional sports model? Regional sports networks, they were big business for college football, Major League Baseball, and the NBA. Fox Sports South, Fox Sports New Orleans, Sun Sports down in Orlando, Altitude in Denver. Every region had their own regional network, or they used to. The regional model, it has been bankrupted. The main reason they were bankrupted? Cable and satellite providers, they quit paying their exorbitant rates. Several years ago, Dish Network, they refused to carry regional networks. If I remember correctly, the carriage dispute started in the summer, right in the middle of baseball season. No one gave a shit. But that was okay. That was okay. The RSNs were thinking once we get into the NBA season, customers will begin pressuring their providers to pay for our sports networks. Now, I'll be honest with you. I was one of those customers. I was calling Dish every week asking when my regional networks would be returning. After weeks and weeks of calling, I finally asked to speak with a manager. I asked if she could tell me if this was ever going to get resolved. I didn't want the scripted answer. I didn't want the corporate bullshit that you have to tell all your customers. I wanted the truth. I asked her, just be honest with me. Give me your opinion on this. And to her credit, that was what she did. She was honest. She told me straight up, I don't see us renewing our deal with Fox Sports. We hardly have any customers demanding for their return. Fast forward a few years later, the regional model, bankrupt. Right now, we could be in the beginning stages of this same thing happening to ESPN. The shitfucks at ESPN, they're in a tough spot here. They have already lost, I think it's almost 30 million subscribers in the past 10 years. Now, you can add another 15 million to that number because they're disputing with Spectrum. That's 45 million subscribers gone. If I remember correctly, I think ESPN charges providers $10 a month to carry their trash, which means a monthly loss of $450 million. Now you got to remember, ESPN just went through a massive round of layoffs. The network is already struggling. ESPN's barely clinging to life at this point. The last thing ESPN needs right now is another loss of $450 million every month. But guess what else is coming up for renewal? The NBA. The only thing keeping ESPN alive. If they lose the NBA, it's over. ESPN's got everything to lose here. If you look at this from Spectrum's perspective, they've really got nothing to lose. Like I said, they were already struggling when they had ESPN. Now they're saving millions every month. Now, are they going to lose subscribers? Of course, but they were already losing subscribers anyway. For ESPN, the only way to win here is for Spectrum to agree to your increased rates. I don't think that's going to happen. If ESPN folds and offers Spectrum, let's say they offer them a discounted rate or even the same rate they were paying before, every other provider, they're going to want the same thing. Now, obviously, ESPN is pushing disgruntled customers to their garbage-ass streaming service, but the question is, are people willing to pay another monthly bill just to watch sports? And it's not even all sports. You're only given access to what ESPN pays for. If you're a diehard fan of the NFL, you've got no need for ESPN Plus. If you're a fan of the Big Ten, college football, you have no need for ESPN Plus. Like I told you guys before, ESPN no longer serves a need in the market. So what does all this mean for you and me? The truth is, if you're a diehard sports fan like I am, we have been subsidized for decades. In this one particular instance, we have something in common with the dump divers in the WNBA. The dump divers are heavily subsidized by the NBA. Throughout my lifetime, my demand for sports, it has been subsidized by women and non-sports fans. And that subsidy rapidly disappearing. Non-sports fans are tired of paying for networks like ESPN that they have no interest in watching. They have been complaining about this for years, about their cable bills increasing and ESPN being a big reason for that. The only difference is now Cable and satellite providers, they are finally listening to these complaints. I have been with Dish Network since 2009. I have never changed my package, been the same for almost 15 years. Back in 2009, I was paying less than $100 a month. Today, I'm paying $200. Now, I don't mind. It's a tax write-off for me, plus I want access to my sports. But if my girlfriend was responsible for paying this bill, we would not have Dish Network. It is about to get a lot more expensive for consumers of live sports. The leagues are not discounting their rates. Broadcast rights for the NBA, they're going up, they're not going down. Someone has to pay for that. Guess who that is? Well, me. When Dish refused to carry the regional networks, did I stop watching the NBA? No, I simply found another way to watch my Pelicans. We are getting closer to the point where leagues no longer need ESPN. For decades, ESPN's been the middleman. They've been kind of like the point of contact, linking sports to consumers. But we are getting closer to the point where leagues could go direct to consumer. Where does that leave ESPN? It essentially makes ESPN useless. Over the summer, Disney contacted all the major sports leagues, asking them to buy a piece of ESPN. Guess how many leagues showed interest? Zero. Consumer interest in ESPN, down. Professional interest in ESPN, down. Ratings, down. Finances down. Ratings at ESPN have gotten so bad, they are celebrating 400,000 viewers on First Take. The next 12 to 18 months are absolutely critical to the future of this network. They have got to find a way to keep the NBA, but ESPN's in a situation where it might not be financially possible. Once they lose the NBA, it's over. No more woke wieners, no more giving courage awards to identifiers like Meg Rapinoe. If Spectrum holds and refuses to pay ESPN, it could create a domino effect throughout the industry. Be honest with yourself. If you lost ESPN today, would it really bother you? Let me know. Me personally, I only watch ESPN for the NBA and the occasional college football game, or if my Saints are playing on Monday night, but all that's real easy to get around. I can find other ways to watch a single game. If you lost ESPN, would it really bother you? I am standing by my original prediction from 2 years ago. I think ESPN ceases to exist by 2030. Hell, at this point, it could happen even sooner than that. What do you think? Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.